Hi, I'm Louis, and today we're going to be discussing griefing in video games. What it is, why it happens, how it happens, and what is being done to combat it. I'll give a basic rundown of griefing, as well as the questions of why it happens, before Will delves further into that topic and talks about the psychology behind griefing. In the next segment, Jack will look at the countermeasures Ubisoft has implemented to combat griefing in Rainbow Six Siege, and TAYLAH will continue that discussion with a look at how Red Dead Online has become extremely prone to griefing due to Rockstar's failure to implement anti-griefing measures. And finally, Finn will conclude our presentation. Enjoy. So, griefing. The act of intentionally irritating or harassing other players within a game, or otherwise attempting to disrupt another user's experience within a game. It's annoying, frustrating,
fucking shoot me again, you stupid little prick.
Well, no, I was trying to fire the RPG.
and completely unavoidable when playing online.
Knock it off! Abrasive! You cannot
Anyone who has played online has come in contact with a griefer at some point. It's a serious problem, and one that game companies are struggling to combat to keep their communities alive. It seems to be prevalent no matter what the style of game, from League of Legends, a game almost famous for its toxic player base, to Minecraft, where people just want to destroy what other people build, to a game like Second Life, where people are intent simply on ruining other people's enjoyment. I personally have lost count of the times I've been told to kill myself because I'm bad, or had a player intentionally team kill me, or someone has camped my body in WoW and repeatedly killed me over and over again for no other reason than to frustrate my own gameplay. And it isn't a new thing. Griefing has been around since pretty much as long as people started playing together online. The term came around in the days of Ultima Online, one of the first MMORPGs. It's present in every online game, often to the detriment of the community and the frustration of players and developers alike. So why are griefers a thing? It's this strange phenomenon where it seems like as soon as you give someone anonymity and a stage on which to perform, they become the worst person in the world. Let's pause for a second and talk about self-determination theory. Self-determination theory is a theory that deals with why people are motivated to do things. It deals with intrinsic motivation, that is, motivation to do something that may not provide you with any external reward. As humans, we have an inherent drive to seek out new challenges. Something like gaming would fit this. You aren't necessarily gaining anything from it. You're doing it because it's interesting and because it's satisfying. Self-determination theory suggests that in order to achieve the highest satisfaction from an activity, it needs to meet three criteria: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy is something that games almost always provide. The player is the hero, in charge of their own destiny. Self-determination. Competence is closely linked with gaming as well, coming with learning the game mechanics and mastering them. Games often link closely here because they provide encouragement, such as leveling or skill points, as you progress. Relatedness is the will to interact with the community surrounding the activity. In other words, for an activity to be truly satisfying, self-determination theory posits it needs to provide autonomy, a sense of accomplishment and progression, and a community to relate to. And research on video games backs this up. The most enjoyable games, and the ones that are consistently highest rated, always satisfy all three of these factors. So if we now return to griefing, why do people enjoy it then? Because by its very definition, it would seem to remove at least one of these motivations, that being relatedness. They must surely distance themselves from the rest of the community purely by their actions. And yet even still, they're everywhere, and many seem to enjoy doing it. There have been a number of studies into griefing and why people enjoy it. One such, conducted by West Virginia University, found the majority of griefers' behaviour could be broadly placed into four categories. Number 1, harassment, usually in the form of insults, slurs, threats, spamming, or disrupting events. Number 2, imposing power, dominating players by repeatedly killing them, targeting new or inexperienced players, or exploiting loopholes in order to harass players. 3, scamming, swindling other players in order to gain advantage. Or 4, greed play, benefiting themselves over all others even to the detriment of other players, including stealing items, stealing kills, achievements, loot, or anything else from players who have earned them. Only greed play seems to carry a different motivation than pure enjoyment of other people's frustration. So why is it that people seem so drawn to griefing? Many self-confessed griefers report that they enjoy the act of griefing, sometimes more so than even playing the game regularly. And with it seemingly here for the long run, what can we do to combat and minimise griefing? Are there any answers to stopping it? And is it even possible to stop?
But what causes players to grief? Is the need to intentionally disrupt the enjoyment of others an indication of sociopathic tendencies? Some sort of empathy deficiency? Too much Monster energy drinks? Probably in some cases, but as a whole, griefing is often a result of frustration experienced from poor previous matches or from some sort of external source. Who here's punched a hole in their drywall after missing a spell or losing a match? I haven't, and if you answered yes to that, that's extremely concerning. There's probably something you need to address personally. But frustration is natural. It's a product of passion and investment. But annoyance and anger aren't just emotions. They can breed physical effects if gone unchecked. Fundamentally, experiencing frustration is a breakdown in which our brains process information, and in turn, it changes the way in which we react and make decisions. In the sporting community, it's called choking, whereas in the gaming community, it's called tilting. Tilting originates from pinball. When a player would grow frustrated, they would tilt the machine in order to guide the ball to safety. Once manufacturers caught onto this, they developed a protocol in which the unit would flash the word tilt and freeze the flippers, disabling player interaction. After some time, poker and gaming adopted the term. Once a player had received several unlucky hands, or was on some sort of losing streak, their frustration would cloud their judgment, resulting in less than optimal strategies and risks, essentially freezing their mental flippers. Once a player has found themselves in this tilting mindset, I believe they're at their strongest risk of griefing. Due to the medium of the video games and its anonymous nature, it dehumanizes peers. It removes perspective and discourages empathy, giving allowance to less than acceptable means of venting and recourse, simply because a fellow player is a mere pixel, as opposed to a human. But that isn't to say some griefing isn't caused by the desire to simply hurt and hinder other players. Studies indicate that less than 1% of all non-institutionalized males aged 18 and over possess some sort of psychopathy. The symptoms of psychopathy include shallow affect, lack of empathy, guilt and remorse, irresponsibility, and impulsivity, the almost perfect toolkit for an irrational and unreasonable player.
Ubisoft's devs have been on the front line for combating griefing in Siege since the game's release. Siege has been through various strategies to combat griefing in the game, including a team vote to kick option. However, this left the team down one player. The reverse friendly fire strategy was released this year as a way to combat team kills and griefers. With reverse friendly fire, when a player shoots an ally or the hostage, a warning message will appear on the offending player's screen. The same will occur if a player uses their unique operator gadget to hurt a teammate. After a player's first validated team kill, all further damage inflicted upon teammates or the hostage is reflected back to the player. When a player uses a unique operator gadget to deal this damage, reflected damage will impact the gadget itself. A message will pop up for the offending player to notify them when reverse friendly fire has been activated. During the kill cam, a team kill victim is able to validate whether they were intentionally team killed. If the player confirms that the kill was intentional, reverse friendly fire will stay active for the offender. If the player believes it was unintentional, reverse friendly fire will be deactivated. Should the victim not make a decision, reverse friendly fire is activated by default. After an intentional team kill is validated, reverse friendly fire will stay active for the match instead of kicking the player.
In order to gain a deeper understanding on why certain players partake in the act of griefing, we decided to go to the source and hear from the players themselves. What better place to do this than a Reddit thread regarding griefing in Red Dead 2? A post by the Reddit user Pen0SS titled Red Dead Online, Why We Grief surprisingly brought up a number of informative points regarding the topic and created an interesting, albeit toxic, back and forth in the comments. Pen0SS opens up about his argument by explaining that how he plays the single-player mode of Red Dead 2 is entirely different to the way he chooses to play the online mode, due to the harsh consequences of your actions and being too invested in Arthur, the protagonist of the storyline. The fact these aren't issues for the online mode of the game highlights a major issue. Pen0SS elaborates on this issue by stating that due to there being little to do, no passive mode, and no repercussions for your actions in Red Dead Online, a number of players have begun to wreak havoc within the game. He explains 99% of his early interactions within the game were unpleasant, motivating him to partake in the griefing himself in order to find some semblance of fun. In closing, he offers some suggestions in order to improve Red Dead Online, such as the introduction of low honor lobbies and passive mode. Pen0SS post, despite being surprisingly articulate and fair, sparks responses that are indicative of the issue of toxicity within the online community. I will not dignify them within the presentation, but they do serve as another example of how such a community spawns griefers. Moving back to Pen0SS's closing argument, it really brings up an interesting question. Why does Rockstar not wish to implement low honor lobbies and passive mode within Red Dead Online when it has a passive mode and a variation of low honor lobbies within its other major property, GTA Online? This may be due to GTA Online being such a monetary success. While it would prove more difficult to do such a thing with Red Dead Online due to the lack of variety in gameplay and customization in its virtual world, it feels as though Red Dead Online has been abandoned by Rockstar, who have undoubtedly put all their eggs into the GTA Online basket. If this is in fact the case, it seems as though the Red Dead Online community will continue to be victims of Pen0SS and his grieving companions for the considerable future.
And in the considerable future, it is up to game designers on how to tackle such a ubiquitous issue in the industry as a whole. Because, as it has plagued online games since Ultima Online in the 90s, so too will griefing continue to be a problem for players and developers alike going forwards. After all, it is in the developers' best interest to consider this phenomenon in every choice they make for their online games, because at the end of the day, griefing causes frustration and distress to players, turning them away from what could be a fun experience and ultimately hurting the developer's bottom line when they leave the server. This is why, as Jack has explained, Ubisoft devs have done their best to combat griefing through reverse friendly fire and team vote to kick, among other countermeasures in Rainbow Six Siege. It is for this very reason too, as Taylor has explained, that Red Dead Online has suffered too. Rockstar hasn't put in anywhere near the same amount of effort as Ubisoft has to make a better experience for their player base, and the online mode's popularity has suffered tremendously because of it. As it was the case with Red Dead Online with players like Pen0SS causing chaos because of the terrible experience he had, Will pointed out how griefing comes from the concept of tilting, where a set of frustrating experiences from within the game or from elsewhere cause players to make irrational decisions and vent their anger accordingly, usually at the cost of other players' enjoyment.
Oh, fuck you, faggot.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit?
In this way, griefing causes a vicious circle of displeasure and frustration in our video games, despite it quite literally going against one of the core reasons we play games in the first place, according to Louis. Moving forward, both as players and game designers, we have to remember that griefing is a phenomenon as old as gaming itself. The best solution as game designers against this ubiquitous issue is to create strong, rewarding games with even stronger player bases. Look at any of the biggest multiplayer titles in the world and you'll see these exact things demonstrated. As players, however, we're here to have fun. That's why we play video games. So all we need to do is play the games that do those two things really well. Because at the end of the day, griefing is here to stay. Thank you very much.